The day he was rejected, the selection hall was huge and cold. Bright lights hung from the high ceiling, making everything feel like a stage. Rows of young men and women stood in line, all wearing the same gray uniform. Each one waited for their name to be called. They were here for the Galactic draft, the day that decided who would serve in Earth's fleet. Some would become pilots, some officers, some engineers. Everyone dreamed of being chosen. Everyone wanted to be part of the fleet that protected humanity across the stars. Kale stood at the very end of the line. He was tall, with dark hair and a face that never showed much emotion. But inside, he was nervous. He had studied maps of the galaxy since he was a child. He had spent hours on flight simulators in the small training center in his town. He wanted this more than anything. The fleet was not just a job. It was honor. It was a chance to see the stars. It was a chance to protect his home. One by one, names were called. Recruits stepped forward. Placing their hand on the scanning panel, the machine read their skills, their health, and their history. A green light meant they were accepted. A red light meant they were rejected. When Kale's turn came, he stepped forward with steady steps. He placed his hand on the cold metal panel. The machine hummed, lights blinked, then a loud sound echoed through the hall. The screen flashed in bold letters. UNFIT rejected. A wave of silence rolled over the room. Then came the whispers. Some recruits covered their mouths to hide their laughter. Others looked at him with pity. One voice from the line muttered, "A waste of oxygen." The officer at the desk didn't even look up. "Step aside," he said coldly. Kale felt the heat rise in his face. He turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last. His dream had just ended in front of everyone. Outside the hall, the sun was setting over the city. The streets were full of people, but Kale walked like a ghost. The rejection slip in his hand felt like a chain. He knew what would happen now. Rejected recruits went back to ordinary life. They worked in factories, in farms, in quiet jobs that never saw the stars. But deep inside, Kale's heart was not ready to give up. That night, in his small apartment, Kale sat by the window. He stared at the black sky and the tiny lights of distant stars. Then his communicator beeped. It was not a normal message. The screen showed only one thing: a set of coordinates, no sender name, no details, just numbers. He hesitated. It could be a mistake or a trap, but something in his chest told him it was not. He copied the coordinates into his old star map. They pointed to a remote asteroid, far beyond the fleet's usual patrol routes. For hours, Kale sat there, thinking if he went, he would be breaking rules. If he stayed, he would spend the rest of his life wondering what might have happened. Finally, he stood up. He grabbed his small bag. He packed water, food, and the food. Little money he had. Before dawn, he left the city and headed to the old spaceport. He found a cargo pilot willing to take him halfway for a small fee. From there, he planned to find another ride. The journey was dangerous, but he did not care. Days later, Kale's small rented shuttle approached the asteroid. It was dark, silent, and almost invisible against the stars. But as he came closer, he saw the outline of structures. Massive hangars built into the rock, landing pads covered in dust. His shuttle touched down with a soft thud. The airlock opened, and he stepped into a long, dim corridor. The walls were covered in old markings of Earth's fleet. At the end of the corridor, a door slid open. An old man stood there, his uniform faded, but his eyes sharp. "You came," the man said, his voice calm but strong. "I wasn't sure anyone would." Kale frowned. "Who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "Once they called me Admiral Reese. And this," he gestured to the massive hangar behind him, "is the Ghost Fleet?" Kale turned and saw them. Rows of warships unlike any he had ever seen, sleek, armored, and bristling with weapons. Some looked like they had been built for speed. Others looked like moving fortresses, They all sat in silence as if waiting. Kale could not believe his eyes. "These ships are supposed to be myths," he whispered. Reese nodded. "That's what they want you to think. They hid them because they feared what they could do in the wrong hands." Then the old man's eyes locked on Kale. "And I think you're the right hands." Kale's heart pounded. In one day, he had gone from being rejected to standing in the middle of the deadliest fleet Earth had ever built. And somehow, deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Asterisk the ghost fleet, the hangar smelled of metal and dust. The air was cold, and every step echoed against the steel floor. Kale followed Admiral Reese deeper inside, his eyes wide. Everywhere he looked, massive warships rested like sleeping beasts. Some were painted black as space, others shimmered with silver armor. Each one had markings from battles long forgotten. Kale felt small walking among them. It was like standing in the presence of giants. "These ships," Reese began, his voice steady, "they were built in secret long before you were born. They were meant to be Earth's shield against any threat. But politics, fear, and greed made the leaders hide them away." Kale ran his hand along the side of one vessel. The metal was cold, but he could feel power beneath the surface. "Why show them to me?" he asked. Reese turned, his eyes sharp. "Because the fleet rejected you for what they call weakness. But I've seen your records, your simulations, your survival runs. You have what they cannot measure: instinct." They walked up a ramp and entered one of the smaller warships. Inside, the walls were lined with glowing panels and old control screens. "This one is called Spear of Orion," Reese said. "She's fast, sharp, and dangerous." Kale stepped into the pilot's seat. The controls felt natural under his hands, almost like the ship knew him. He glanced at Reese. "You want me to fly her?" Reese smiled faintly. "Not just fly, Command." Kale shook his head. "Command? I've never led anyone." Reese placed a hand on his shoulder. "Command is not about medals or titles," he said. "It's about decisions when the galaxy is trying to kill you. Out here, hesitation means death." Kale felt the weight of the words. He remembered the humiliation of the draft, the laughter, the whispers, the cold dismissal. He clenched his fists. "I'll do it," he said. His voice firm. Training began the next day. There were no classrooms, no ranks, no long speeches. Reese taught him through action. They started with maneuvers in empty space, weaving between asteroids at impossible speeds. Kale learned how to manage energy systems, how to push the engines to their limits without burning them out. Then came weapons training. Kale fired plasma cannons, railguns, and missiles at moving targets. The recoil shook the ship, but he adapted quickly. Within a week, Reese no longer had to give instructions. Kale moved like a natural. One evening, as they finished a training run, alarms blared through the Ghost Fleet base. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Reese rushed to the control room. Kale right behind him. A screen showed 3 alien scout ships entering the asteroid Shadow. "They shouldn't be here," Reese muttered. "They must have picked up traces of the fleet." Kale felt a rush of adrenaline. "What do we do?" Reese turned to him. "This is your test. You take Spear of Orion and drive them away." Kale's throat tightened. This wasn't a simulation. This was real. Lives were at stake. The fleet's secrecy was at stake. He ran to the hangar, jumped into the pilot's seat, and powered up the engines. The ship roared to life, the controls glowing under his fingers. The hangar doors opened, reeling the darkness of space. Kale pushed the throttle, and Spear of Orion shot forward. Stars streaked past as he closed. The distance to the alien scouts, the enemy ships were sleek and insect-like, their wings lined with glowing thrusters. They spotted him and broke formation, moving to surround him. Kale's heart pounded. He remembered Reese's words. Command is about decisions when the galaxy is trying to kill you. He didn't wait for them to fire first. He cut his engines, letting the ship drift. The aliens overshot him, confused. Kale spun the ship around in a tight arc and fired the railguns. One scout ship exploded in a bright flash, debris scattering into the void. The remaining two closed in from opposite sides. Kale dove toward the nearest asteroid, weaving between sharp rocks. The aliens followed, but their ships were too big for the narrow gaps. Kale fired missiles behind him. One hit the second ship, tearing it apart. The last alien turned and tried to flee. Kale locked on and fired a single plasma blast. The ship vanished in a ball of light. Breathing hard, Kale turned Spear of Orion. Back toward the base, Reese was waiting in the hangar, a rare smile on his face. "You passed," he said simply. Kale stepped out of the cockpit, still shaking from the rush. "You didn't just fight," Reese continued. "You thought. You adapted, you won." Kale looked back at the ship. For the first time, he felt he belonged here. Not in the draft, not in the official fleet, but here. With the Ghost Fleet, and deep inside, he knew this was only the first of many battles. First blood. The days passed quickly after Kale's victory over the alien scouts. Every morning began with training. Reese pushed him harder. More speed drills, more weapons practice, more scenarios where one mistake meant destruction. Kale's skills grew sharper. His instincts became faster. But he also knew that practice was nothing compared to real battle. One quiet afternoon, the base's long-range sensors began to hum. Kale was in the hangar when Reese came in, his face dark. "Alien raiders," he said. "They're hitting a human colony on the edge of the Kalar Belt." Kale froze. That colony was home to miners and families. They had no warships, no defenses strong enough to hold out. "How far?" Kale asked. "2 jumps," Reese replied. "If we leave now, we might get there before they finish." There was no hesitation. Kale ran to Spear of Orion. Reese followed, carrying a small case of weapons. As the ship lifted from the asteroid's surface, Kale felt the engines hum beneath him. The stars blurred as they jumped through hyperspace. His hands tightened on the controls. This time, there would be no simulation. This time, people could die if he failed. They dropped out of hyperspace above the colony. Kale's heart clenched. The surface below burned with scattered fires. Alien ships swarmed like predators, firing on buildings and transports. Kale counted 8 of them. They were faster than the scouts, armed with heavier weapons, but they didn't know Spear of Orion was coming. "Your command," Reese said quietly. Kale didn't waste a second. He dived toward the enemy formation, firing missiles before they even noticed him. The first blast tore apart one raider. The others scattered in confusion. Kale switched to plasma cannons. Bright bolts of energy ripped through another ship's engines, sending it spinning out of control. 2 enemy fighters broke away to chase him. Kale swerved between the colony's tall mining towers. Their plasma fire scorched the walls, but they couldn't get a clean shot. Kale led them into a narrow canyon between rock ridges. He slowed just enough for them to close the gap. Then, he cut the engines and spun the ship 180 degrees. The sudden maneuver caught them off guard. 2 quick bursts from the railguns, and both ships vanished in explosions. 4 left, Reese reported. Kale's mind raced. The remaining raiders were regrouping, circling near the colony's largest habitation dome. If they fired on it, hundreds would die instantly. Kale pushed Spear of Orion forward at full speed. He released a spread of micro-missiles, forcing the enemy to scatter. One ship tried to flank him, but Kale pulled a sharp roll and fired point-blank. The blast ripped it apart. The last 3 raiders began to retreat. Kale could have let them go, but he remembered the smoke, the burning homes, the terrified faces of civilians running for cover. He couldn't allow them to come back. He gave chase, engines screaming, one by one. The raiders fell under his fire. The final enemy ship exploded in a flash of light, leaving only silence. Kale circled back over the colony. The fires were still burning, but the attack was over. Relief washed over him. For the first time, he had fought not just to protect the Ghost Fleet's secret, but to protect people. He felt something deeper than pride. It was purpose. As they landed, a small group of colonists came forward. Their faces were tired, but their eyes were grateful. A little girl stepped forward and handed Cale a small metal charm. "It's for luck," she said softly. Cale nodded and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He didn't need to say anything. The look in his eyes said enough. Back aboard the Spear. Of Orion, Rhys studied him. "You fought like a commander today," he said. Cale shook his head. "I just did what I had to." Rhys smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you'll lead more than this ship someday." As they left the colony behind, Cale couldn't stop thinking about what Rhys had said. He had been rejected by the draft, thrown aside as useless. But now the galaxy was starting to see a different truth. This was only the beginning of the fight, and Cale knew the battles ahead would be far greater than this. Asterisk, the fleet that shouldn't exist, the hangar of the Ghost Fleet, was alive with movement. Ships were being repaired, weapons checked, engines tuned. The battle at the colony had proven something to Admiral Rhys. Cale was not just a good pilot. He was a leader in the making, but one ship alone could not hold back the storms that were coming. Cale stood on the command platform, looking over the silent giants around him. Dozens of warships sat in the shadows. Some were half buried under dust. Others had missing armor plates. Many had not flown in decades. "These are our future," Rhys said, stepping up beside him. "If we can wake them up." For days, Cale worked alongside engineers and technicians who had stayed hidden with the Ghost Fleet. They were veterans, deserters, and misfits people the official fleet had abandoned. Each had a story, each had a reason to stay off the grid. But when Cale spoke to them, they listened. He wasn't an officer with medals. He was someone who understood being thrown away, and that made them willing to follow him. Work on the ships moved fast. Engines were rebuilt, plasma arrays recharged, targeting systems rewired. The sound of tools echoed through the hangars. Cale learned every ship's design. He wanted to know their strengths, their weaknesses, and their secrets. The Spear of Orion was still his flagship, but now she was joined by others, sleek interceptors, heavy destroyers, and massive carriers. One night, as Cale studied tactical maps, Rhys entered the room carrying a data slate. "You need to see this," he said. Cale took the slate and read the intercepted alien transmission. His stomach tightened. The alien warlords had learned of the Ghost Fleet's existence. They believed it was only a myth, but the colony attack had raised doubts. Now they were planning something bold, a full-scale invasion of Earth. They believed Earth's official fleet would crumble in days, and they intended to strike within 72 hours. Cale set the slate down. "They won't wait," he said quietly. Rhys nodded. "If they find the Ghost Fleet before we're ready, they'll destroy us too." Cale turned back to the map. Every instinct told him that waiting was death. "We take the fight to them," he said. Rhys raised an eyebrow. "You mean attack first?" "Yes," Cale said firmly. "If we let them gather their forces, Earth will burn." The next day, Cale called the crew together. Men and women stood shoulder to shoulder in the hangar. He told them the truth about the invasion, about Earth's weakness, about the Ghost Fleet's only chance. "We are not the official fleet," he said, his voice carrying across the steel walls. "We are not bound by their politics or their fear. We were forgotten, but we will be remembered. We will strike before they do." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some looked afraid, others eager. But when Cale's eyes swept over them, they stood taller. It wasn't just his words, it was the fire in his voice. They believed him. They were ready to follow him into the unknown. Preparations began at once. Ships powered up one by one, their engines roaring to life after years of silence. Lights flickered on across the hangar. casting long shadows on the fin. Floor, weapons bays were stocked, shields tested. Kale walked the rows, speaking to crew members, checking each station. By the end of the day, 12 warships stood ready to launch. Late that night, Kale stood on the observation deck. Below him, the fleet glowed under the hangar lights. He thought of the draft, of the cold rejection. He thought of the colony and the little girl's charm still in his pocket. This wasn't just about proving himself anymore. This was about protecting every world that couldn't protect itself. Reese joined him, his hands clasped behind his back. "They'll call us criminals for this," he said. Kale didn't look. "Away from the fleet, they can call us whatever they want," he replied. "As long as Earth survives." The silence between them carried more than words. The ghost fleet was no longer a forgotten relic. It was a weapon, and Kale was ready to unleash it. Earth's deadliest commander, the darkness of space was calm. Too calm. Kale stood on the bridge of the Spear of Orion, staring at the holographic display. The alien invasion fleet had arrived. Hundreds of warships, sleek and predatory, gathered in high orbit above Earth. Their weapons were hot, their shields up, their engines ready for slaughter. In the heart of the planet's defense network, Earth's official fleet was crumbling. Distress calls poured in from every channel. Commanders shouted for reinforcements. That would never come. Kale heard the desperation in their voices. The same fleet that had rejected him was now moments away from defeat. Reese stepped beside him, eyes cold and steady. "They don't know we're coming," he said. Kale nodded. "Good, because surprise was their only advantage. All ships," Kale spoke into the comms, "form battle line and engage jump sequence." Across the asteroid base, 12 Ghost Fleet warships roared to life. Engines flared, weapons charged, shields powered. They moved like predators awakening after a long sleep. In seconds, the blackness of hyperspace swallowed them. When they emerged, they were above Earth. The alien armada loomed ahead, a wall of metal and fire. Kale's fleet appeared behind their formation, catching them completely off guard. "Target their rear carriers," Kale ordered. Missiles streaked forward, tearing through enemy hulls before they even knew what was happening. The first alien carrier exploded, its wreckage smashing into nearby fighters. Kale's voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Shift flanking maneuvers," he said. The Ghost Fleet moved in perfect formation, weaving between enemy ships, their weapons hit with deadly precision. Every shot counted. Every move forced the enemy to react. The aliens scrambled to face them, but Kale's tactics were nothing like the official fleet's predictable patterns. He used sudden speed bursts, sharp turns, and split-second retreats. Enemy squadrons fell apart trying to match his pace. One battleship tried to trap him in crossfire. Kale dove beneath it and fired plasma rounds straight into its reactor core. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. Reese watched him work, a faint smile on his face. "You're not just fighting them," he said. "You're breaking them." Kale didn't answer. He was already locking on to his next target. In the chaos, Earth's battered defense fleet began to rally. They saw the Ghost Fleet tearing through enemy lines and found the courage to fight harder. For the first time since the battle began, the tide was turning, but Kale knew it wasn't over. Because in the center of the alien formation, a massive warship was advancing, larger than anything else in their fleet, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. "That's their command ship," Reese said. "If it reaches low orbit, it can destroy entire cities in one shot." Kale's jaw tightened. "Then we take it down," he said. He ordered the fleet to split half, would keep the alien reinforcements busy. The rest would follow him straight toward the giant. The alien flagship opened. Fire, energy beams cut through the void, forcing Kale to twist and roll Spear of Orion between blasts. 2 Ghost Fleet destroyers took hits, their shields shattering, but they held formation. Kale dove under the flagship's belly, locking onto its vulnerable underhull. "Fire, all." "Batteries," he ordered. The Ghost Fleet unleashed a storm of plasma and missiles. Armor plating ripped away. Flames burst from the ship's sides. But the alien commander wasn't giving up. The flagship swung around, bringing its main cannon to bear. Kale made a snap decision. Full speed ahead, ramming vector. Gasps filled the comms, but the Ghost Fleet obeyed. They poured everything into speed, dodging smaller ships and incoming fire. At the last moment, Kale pulled hard to port. The spear of Orion skimmed along the flagship's surface, dropping a string of explosive charges across its length. Seconds later, the charges detonated. The alien flagship split in two, its broken halves drifting apart before erupting in a blinding fireball. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining alien ships broke formation, fleeing into hyperspace. Earth's sky was clear again. Kale exhaled slowly. His fleet had done the impossible. From the shadows, they had struck with the force of a storm, and now the galaxy knew Earth had a new commander to fear. Asterisk the last stand at Orion's gate. The victory above Earth was still fresh. But Kale knew the war was far from over. Scouts reported strange activity near Orion's gate, a massive wormhole at the edge of human territory. If the aliens took control of it, they could strike anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Kale stood. Over the star map, a red marker pulsed at Orion's gate. Reese entered the room, his expression grim. "They're moving their super weapon there," he said. Kale's eyes narrowed. The super weapon was a dreadnought rumored to carry a planet killer. Cannon. One shot could erase an entire world. Kale gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. "We can't let them reach the gate," he said. "If they pass through, we'll be chasing them forever." The officers exchanged tense looks. Everyone understood what it meant. If the super weapon reached the wormhole, it would disappear into alien-controlled space. They might never get another chance to destroy it. The Ghost Fleet prepared for launch. Engines roared to life. Weapon systems powered up. 12 ships formed up in a tight formation. Kale's voice cut through the comms. "This will be the Usg. Hardest fight we've faced," he said. "Some of us may not come back, but if we succeed, the war changes forever." They jumped into hyperspace. When they emerged, Orion's gate filled the view, a swirling tunnel of light, glowing with blue and gold energy. And there it was, the alien dreadnought, a monstrous vessel 3 times the size of any Ghost Fleet ship. Its hull bristled with weapons, its main cannon glowing like the heart of a star. Kale wasted no time. "All ships, attack formation Delta," he ordered. The Ghost Fleet surged forward. The dreadnought's escorts moved to intercept. Kale's destroyers opened fire, tearing through the smaller ships with precision strikes. But the dreadnought kept moving toward the gate. Its engines burned bright, pushing it closer to escape. Plasma beams lit up space. Missiles screamed through the void. Kale dove Spear of Orion between 2 enemy cruisers, blasting both apart. But the dreadnought's main cannon began to charge. Reese's voice came over the comms. "They're targeting the fleet." Kale made a split-second decision. "All ships scattered, keep moving." The cannon fired. A blinding beam of energy tore through the battlefield. One Ghost Fleet frigate was caught in the blast, vanishing in an instant. Kale's jaw tightened. They couldn't take another hit like that. Target their engine cores? Kale shouted. The fleet focused all firepower on the dreadnought's massive thrusters. Explosions rippled across its rear section, slowing it down, but it was still moving toward the gate. Kale realized they needed something bigger, something the dreadnought couldn't recover from. "Reese, take command," Kale said. Before Reese could argue, Kale pushed the Spear of Orion forward alone. He weaved through enemy fire. Getting closer to the dreadnought's underside, alarms blared in his cockpit, shields dropping. But he kept going. He released a full payload of charges, directly into the superweapon's reactor vents. Then he pulled away at maximum speed. The charges detonated in a chain reaction. The dreadnought's hull split. Fires erupting along its length, its main cannon flickered, then exploded in a violent burst of energy. The shockwaves slammed into Spear of Orion. Systems went dark. Alarms screamed. Kale gritted his teeth, holding the controls steady. Through the smoke and debris, he saw the dreadnought drifting, its engines dead, its weapons silent. Then the wormhole's unstable gravity began to pull it in. The massive ship twisted and tore apart as it was dragged into the gate. Moments later, it was gone. Only silence remained. The ghost fleet regrouped, battered but alive. Cheers filled the cones. Reese's voice came through, steady but proud. "You did it, Kale." Kale exhaled, his voice calm. "We all did." But as he looked at Orion's gate, still swirling with dangerous beauty, he knew this wasn't the end. The aliens would come again, and when they did, he would be ready. Asterisk. The commander who returned the battle at Orion's gate had left the ghost fleet scarred. Ships limped back through space with hulls torn and engines flickering. Many crew members were wounded. Some ships would never fly again. And Kale was gone. The Spear of Orion had been last seen near the dreadnought's final explosion. When the shockwave hit, it vanished from the fleet's sensors. For days they searched. They combed the wreckage fields, scanned every fragment of space. But there was no sign of him. Some whispered that he had been lost with the dreadnought. Others believed he had been pulled into the wormhole. Reese said nothing, but the shadow in his eyes told the crew how much the loss weighed on him. Back on Earth, celebrations filled the streets. People cheered for the ghost fleet, for the victory that had saved them from destruction. But for Reese and the crew, the cheers were hollow. They had won, but their commander had not come home. Weeks passed. The ghost fleet returned to its hidden base. Repairs began. Reese took command in Kale's absence, but every time he stepped onto the bridge, he could almost hear Kale's voice. Every tactical choice, every maneuver felt like a shadow of what Kale would have done. Then, one cold morning, the long-range sensors beeped. A lone signal appeared at the edge of the system. Weak, broken, but human. Reese's heart pounded as he ordered it brought up. On screen, a battered ship drifted slowly into view, its hull scorched, its armor barely holding together. And on its side, though burned and faded, were the words Spear of Orion. The hangar was silent as the ship came in for landing. The ramp lowered, and Kale stepped out. His uniform was torn, his face bruised, but he was alive. The crew surged forward, cheers breaking the stillness. Reese was the first to reach him, gripping his shoulder. "I knew you weren't finished," Reese said. Kale smiled faintly. "Not even close." As they walked through the hangar, Kale carried more than just his survival. Behind him, a shuttle emerged from the Spear of Orion. Its hatch opened, and alien prisoners stepped out, leaders of the enemy fleet. Kale had captured them in the chaos of the battle. They were bound, silent, their eyes burning with hate. But their presence was proof of Kale's victory, proof that the ghost fleet had not just survived, but struck a blow the galaxy would never forget. Later, standing before the entire crew, Kale spoke. "We fought because no one else could." He said, "We won because we refused to be forgotten. The galaxy will come again, and when it does, they will remember what happened here." From that day on, his name spread across human and alien worlds alike. To some, he was a hero. To others, a dangerous outlaw, but to his crew, he was the commander who had led them from the shadows to the stars. The commander who had taken those deemed useless and built the most lethal fleet Earth had ever known. And as the ghost fleet prepared for its next mission, Kale stood once more. On the bridge of the Spear of Orion, the little girl's metal charm still hanging from his jacket pocket. His eyes were fixed on the endless black of space, because somewhere out there, the next battle was waiting, and Kale was ready to meet. It asterisk.